So it's more of an introduction to the alliance that we've been taking in the technologies to the marketplace. So welcome. Please join us interactively. The more you participate, the more we enjoy it as well. There is an ability to send in your questions, so please do convey that through the chat panel as those questions arise, or you can hold them off till the end. In terms of logistics, it should run about half an hour. We did start late, so we'll continue until the end of the deck. And if there's any follow-on questions that you'd like to address, then you'll be able to take that up with either Xpertdoc or DocFinity directly. So we will start immediately with the Xpertdoc. Little introduction to what we'll be presenting today. We'd like to introduce you to Xpertdoc. I think most of the players online joining us today have familiarity with the DocFinity solution. Some have some background to Xpertdoc, so we'd like to bring those two audiences together through this presentation today. We'd like to introduce you to document generation as an overall concept, so we're all speaking the same language as we move forward, and then certainly take you through an overview of DocFinity, ECM, workflow, so that you understand that context, and then pull in how DocFinity looked at Xpertdoc and selected it as a tool that they would like to leverage in their document generation activities with clients. This will not just simply be high-level information about the two companies. We will actually get into some sample scenarios, and these have been outlined here, integrated with the DocFinity solution, leveraging Xpertdoc. And so Ian will be taking us through the actual scenarios that have been developed for this presentation, and certainly more depth behind that for your individual deployments. We'll have a few concluding remarks at the end and follow that up with any formal questions that have been held off till the end. So a word about Xpertdoc and who we are. We're a software company based in Montreal, strong IP and patents pending on various technologies as well as migration path that we're offering for various legacy solutions that are migrating over to Xpertdoc. So this will address some of the Caligo, Mosaic, iStream, Syncom, DocSci formats that need to be converted over. We have an automated process to handle that. It is a best-in-class document output automation technology that's being touted not only by our partners but Microsoft as well. Taking what we've done with the Microsoft Word environment and leveraging that, working with Dynamics CRM and SharePoint, so it's a very clear fit with the Microsoft stack. Beyond the Microsoft stack, of course, Xpertdoc does integrate with various IT systems that you may have in your own environment. So from an insurance or healthcare perspective, you may be integrating with policy admin or claim systems. You may have other MRP systems that you need to integrate with in a manufacturing environment. You've got school records that we can integrate with as well in an educational format. Extensions to document output have been included in the Xpertdoc solution. This includes things like the electronic signature, print stream management, and the full mailroom outsourced capacity and mailroom services. These were natural extensions to the Xpertdoc solution. All that Xpertdoc actually produces and focuses on has to do with document output, document generation. So these were very natural extensions that we were able to bring to the Xpertdoc solution. It's being adopted by companies across various industries and various sizes. Legal services, insurance, manufacturing, government, education are some of the strong industries that are starting to really adopt and ramp out with Xpertdoc. When we talk about document generation and what it is, I just want to take a minute to make sure we're all talking about the same thing here. We've got a similar language that we're pulling together. So when we talk about document generation, we're really looking at how do we create a document from the beginning. And if you think about your environment at work, what are the different systems you need to go to in order to pull together a simple letter, or to pull together a newsletter that's relevant to the recipient, or a policy or contract that actually integrates with not your entire database, but things that are specific and relevant to the person receiving that document. The effort that goes on in large enterprises today is very time-consuming. It's a very onerous project to try and implement very custom features into a simple letter. What Xpertdoc is looking at is building that intelligence within the document itself. So bringing a lot of the content that comes from the different sources into the template in an automated fashion. If we look at the client communication lifecycle that we've got in front of you here, Xpertdoc actually delivers to each of these components. So the design phase is about how you set out your template. What are the content that needs to be pulled in? What are the sources of data that need to be accessed? What elements do you wish to lock down? Perhaps it's your branding or regulatory or financial information. That all gets consolidated into a template and then launched to the business user community. The middle section is about communicating. These are the business users that would then leverage the templates that have been provisioned to them through the system. They would then customize that document to whatever communication they need to engineer for their customers, and then get to the third panel, which is distribution. And this can actually adopt a host of distribution mechanisms. Xpertdoc offers it through fax, print, HTML, PDF. You can offer up the full spectrum, or you can actually consolidate that down to your select 1 or 2 or 3 options that you'd like to provision to your business users. The important part here is that there's an element of compliance that needs to apply underneath all of those components of design, communicate, and distribute. So we are constantly looking at making sure there's full compliance to regulatory, legal, financial issues, marketing, branding is consistent right across the deck. One of the key differentiators for Xpertdoc is how in 2006, 2007, we were the first company worldwide as a partner to Microsoft that totally rewrote our product and the product suite to embed it in OpenXML. That meant we were able to take advantage of some of the traditional Word features, the fact that it was very intuitive, easy to use, the business community already knows how to use it, and they're invested in it, so there's a commitment factor. Taking that and leveraging the OpenXML capabilities within the Xpertdoc solution meant that we're able to bring a lot more of the performance enhancements and feature-rich capabilities to the table. Scalability is very easy, upgrading is simplified, and there's tremendous flexibility in how you integrate this to many of your back-end systems. So that's the backdrop of how we actually work together in bringing Xpertdoc as a document. This example will actually show you how it's been integrated. It leverages the native Word environment, as you can see here. It adds in a new ribbon for the Xpertdoc capabilities. And this is a letter that's actually been generated within the DocFinity environment. So it's bringing the two tools together in an integrated fashion. The integration work started a little under a year ago. Really started to look from, I guess it was DocFinity that came across Xpertdoc and was looking at how they can leverage the document generation capability into their tool and workflows. So the discussion started then. Some of the points that are on this slide, and I won't go through all of them, you can certainly get them in a download, but these actually highlight some of the reasons DocFinity started to look a little closely at Xpertdoc. The entire process from start to finish was under a week to get the integration done. The discussions were a day or two. I think there was certainly a very sound fit both in the technologies as well as the philosophies between the companies and how we work together to deliver value to our customer base. So the integration happened. There's been a proof of concept that's been delivered. There are deployments that are starting already, and really the purpose of sharing some of this information with you today is that this has gone a bit further in terms of how we can support people that are coming from specific industries that are targeted in today's webinar. That would be the educational, healthcare, and insurance sectors. I think, Ian, if you've still got audio, would you like to take these on? And I think we've got some samples that come from DocFinity for you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So now that we have documents created from Xpertdoc, where does DocFinity fit into the picture? So what DocFinity can do is, from the workflow perspective, we mentioned this in previous slides already, our workflow engine has the ability to trigger the document generation process, whether that's from what we call a server-based task, where the server is actually batch generating documents maybe based on data we derive from documents, data we derive from a workflow process, or possibly data we derive from an e-form. That triggers the generation of batch documents which we send directly to customers and moving on. We also have the ability to generate documents as part of what we call a user-based task, where the user, based on the process, can actually manually generate a document based on templates and can kind of go from there. So through our workflow product, we can actually execute whether it's a server-based or a user-based generation of these documents. In addition to that, some of our customers need the ability to approve a document prior to it being sent out to the individual customer. So we have the ability through our workflow process to trigger an approval process where the user can, is it approved, yes or no, and if it's no, maybe make changes, and then deliver to the customer from that point moving forward. And we'll get into an example of what we're talking about there. From the retrieval side, DocFinity is very open. Just like Xpertdoc, we publish our web services, we publish our various APIs, which does allow our customers the ability to integrate that with their third-party line of business systems. Whether that line of business system is a student information system, whether it's a claims management system, a policy administration system, an electronic medical record system, whatever drives your business day-to-day, we can integrate the two together and allow users the ability to retrieve documents from their particular business application, where documents might be located in the DocFinity repository. So we do offer that type of integration, whether it's a line of business system, and we're talking about here also portals as well too. Whether you open up that portals to your customers, whether your customers are students, insured, whatever the case may be. So we do offer the ability to retrieve there. And lastly, one of the big drivers for organizations looking at DocFinity is the ability to manage the life cycle of the document once it's captured in the repository. And what I mean by that is that there is, based on whether it's state regulations, federal regulations, maybe organizations that govern how you do business, you need the ability to store a document for a certain period of time and then track the audit about who's accessing that document. DocFinity does that well. And then we have a records management module, maybe after the life cycle of the document. Let's just say, for example, 7 years, our records management module can actually take that document and purge it out of the system. Because in some instances, you have to store for a certain period of time, but then after that time, it might be a liability for your organization to store that document. So DocFinity does have the ability to manage the records management and the records life cycle of those documents. Okay, next slide, please. So let's give you a brief background of DocFinity and OIT, which is Optical Image Technology, who is a developer of the DocFinity product. Again, I'm not going to go through each one of these slides, but I definitely want to show you that we're headquartered in State College, Pennsylvania, and we've been doing enterprise content management solutions since 1986. So there's 26 years worth of features and functions and within the application, we use best-of-breed products. We're very open, very scalable, so you as an organization can start small and grow the solution over time. And the main thing is everything is developed in-house in our offices in State College, Pennsylvania. So from a support aspect, when you submit an issue, you're dealing directly with the developer of the software. I think this is in both cases, both DocFinity and Xpertdoc, with, if there is a question, you do have issues, developers of software are actually right down the hall. Next slide, please. And then we'll briefly talk about architecture. I don't want to get, I just want to give the technical people in the room just kind of a high level of how DocFinity is architected behind the scenes. You see here we have the DocFinity server, which contains the process engine, which is the workflow process engine, importer engines, etc. And then we have our browser interface communicates through our API to get to the various features and functions. That API, that web services API, which we're calling here in this picture, the DocFinity API, is published and provided to customers to help them in regards to integration. Just like we've integrated Xpertdoc and DocFinity together, you have the ability to integrate DocFinity with your other line of business applications. Again, we discussed those earlier, to get documents out of system. Maybe it's workflow where we have bi-directional data integration, where through workflow we have an approval process. Maybe we need to push that approval data to a third-party system to update that application. You do have the ability to do that. From a retrieval aspect, we do have, we could utilize this API to integrate with your portals, to integrate with SharePoint as well. For those of you who are using SharePoint, we do not only do our URL API integration, we also have web parts available, which is Microsoft's way to embed third-party technology within their portal. So we do offer you those free of charge as well. So next slide. So let's actually talk about the integration, how we were able to integrate it, and Versa talked about it briefly. And again, I'm not going to dive into it too much, but the way we were able to integrate the two applications together is because of our plugin architecture framework. And what we were able to do in a very short period of time, I think it was 1 or 2 days, was actually built the integration utilizing web services, and we were able to build, here you see from a user task, the ability to generate documents using Xpertdoc from a user task, and we also have the ability to generate batch documents from a server task, which is that generate letters function here. Because of it's a plugin framework, when you upgrade, you carry that functionality moving forward. So we're utilizing here for the integration, but think about this in your head, other integrations you might have within your organization. Maybe there's custom widgets we need to build for your particular process. We build them using our plugin framework, and then moving forward, that functionality stays with you when you upgrade the technology. Next slide, please. So let's get into some of the scenarios here, and this higher education scenario was actually brought to us by one of our customers in the alumni affairs department within an institution. And what their quandary was they had they're getting donations from big donors, and when they get the information, they have to create contracts. And these contracts are very boilerplate, but then based on the type of donation and what they want to do with it, they need to change certain terms and conditions. So what we've actually had the ability to do with Workflow and Xpertdoc is be able to kind of automate this process, where we have a donor submit their donation to the university through what we call an electronic form through their website, and that electronic form triggers a workflow process which communicates to Xpertdoc to generate the contract, and then it comes back to the user. They review it, they make any changes, and then through email would they distribute the contract to the user or to the donor for their execution, and then they could go about doing the collection of the donation and giving the donor what they've asked for. So if we go to the next slide, we'll actually dive into exactly what's going on here. So if we go to the next, this is the form that we have the user filling in this particular example. I'm actually donating to this school a donation of $50,000, and I want it to go to 2 different areas: the School of Business and the athletics areas, and then any comments to that. So once I hit the submit button, it's going to bring up it's going to automatically execute this donor contract process behind the scenes. And we'll go in and actually dive into each individual step just to show you exactly what's going on. So we go to the next slide, you're actually going to see the individual steps. So we're going to dive into here. We talked about, if those of you can read it, we have the set donor ID for contract creation, and then we're going to focus on the contract creation with Xpertdoc. So when we hit next, you're going to see the form, what the form is going to do, the data that I filled out in this form. What DocFinity is going to do is extract that data and put into what we call process instance variables. And we're actually just storing the data here within the system. And then when we go to the next, we're going to hand that information over to Xpertdoc to create that contract. The area, the College of Business, the athletics, the amount of the donation. Then when we go to the next slide, you're going to see, next slide, please. Now we're going to have to get the contract review stage. So when we hit next, you're going to see the actual DocFinity attaches the contract. So behind the scenes, Xpertdoc has created the contract, delivers it back to DocFinity, all through web services behind the scenes. No user has interaction with this. And then what DocFinity is going to do is attach that contract that Xpertdoc created and put it towards the workflow package. And then in the next, you're going to see what it looks like from the workflow side. So now we have the contract generated in Xpertdoc, brought directly to the user. At this particular case, when they hit next, they can make a decision. Do I need to make changes to that contract? Is boilerplate okay? Maybe I need to make some changes. Not only does I want to send that donation to athletics, but he wants it to go to the football team and the ice hockey team. So they can make additional changes within that contract. And then when I hit next, what we're going to do behind the scenes is we're automatically going to email that contract to the individual donor for execution of it. So here is the donor email that they're going to receive. when I hit next, you're going to actually view the contract. So what's nice is that we've started the process with an electronic form. We push that data to Xpertdoc. Xpertdoc creates the contract, hands it back to DocFinity. We display it to the user for approval. Once they approve, we automatically email to the donor the executed contract, or the contract ready for execution. So that's a very, it's similar, obviously every single university, we all know our alma maters are always asking for donations, so this is a process that a lot of our higher ed institutions have to deal with. So let's kind of move from higher ed, and let's go to our next example, which is a healthcare example. In this particular case, in this particular example, we're going to be talking about the new Affordable Care Act, which is specific to the summary of benefits and coverages that health insurers now have to deal with as of March 2012. And based on that, this requires the health insurers to provide to companies, their insured, a summary of their benefits and coverages for their employees. And a very short time frame, from my understanding, the statute came into effect March of 2012. Health insurers have to be in compliance as of September of 2012. So obviously a very short time period to actually go about and be compliant with this statute. And if they're not compliant with this statute, from my understanding, there is $1,000 per infraction per day that they will incur if they're not compliant with this. So think about this: if you have a small company of 100 employees, each employee has health care coverage, that's $1,000 times 100 employees per day until they become compliant. So that's a lot of money being fined to the individual health insurers out there. So, and what's nice is that the original template for creation of these SBCs was built in Word. So obviously with Xpertdoc being very tightly integrated with Word, the transition to implementation is very, very quick. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to actually show you what's happening behind the scenes here. So this is the actual workflow. Basically what we're going to be doing, if you hit next, I believe we're going to just be gathering the group ID of the company to generate their SBC. So when you hit next, it's just going to go through kind of the screenshot of exactly what's going on here. We're going to, once we hit next, it's going to ask the user to enter in their appropriate group ID. In this particular case, it's 12345 6-1. And then we go to the next slide. It's going to show you the, we're going to create the summary of benefits coverages, and then we're going to email that to the insured. So we're going to show an example of what the email looks like here. Next. Yep, there we go. And then once I hit view and hit next, you're going to see a creation of that SBC based on the data we've captured through DocFinity workflow, hand it to Xpertdoc, and they create the SBC. Again, what's nice in summary is that the original template that is created for this act is in Word, transitions very nicely to what Xpertdoc with their tight integration with Word, so you can be implemented very, very quick and meet that September 2012 deadline. So that's a great example of the integration in a healthcare example. The last example we want to show is an insurance example. In this particular case, we're talking about either application for new business for insurance or possibly renewal of insurance. And I don't want to go through each and every one of these steps. Those insurance companies that are on here understand the underwriting process. So if I hit next, you're going to see kind of a snippet of that underwriting process right there. And that underwriting process, this is where we're gathering risk. We're going to maybe getting credit reports. We're getting information so that the underwriter can make a decision: do we want to write the business or do we want to deny the business? And this is where the integration with Xpertdoc and workflow actually takes into account. So if we hit next, you're going to see the actual step in detail. So in this particular case, in this particular example, we're going to show that yes, we want to write this business, so now we want to issue the policy. So in this particular step, when we hit next, you're going to see the workflow step. Here we're going to view the quote, what was quoted by the agent, and then we're going to take that data and then we're going to push it to Xpertdoc to actually create the policy declaration page. So here and then behind the scenes, once it's created, we're going to send an email to the insured with their new policy. So here we're going to show another example of that email and the attachment of the insurance policy. When we hit next, you'll see a copy of that policy again. In this particular case, we're doing the underwriting process. We're gathering the data. Do we want to write the business? Yes, we hand that information over to Xpertdoc to create the policy deck page, and then it comes back, and then we're automatically emailing that policy to the individual insured. So in all these examples, what we're actually showing is the ability to automate some of these paper-intensive processes from gathering of data, pushing it to Xpertdoc to create these various documents, whether they're letters, whether they're contracts, whether they're policy decks, whether they're SBCs, and then DocFinity is taking that information, storing it, and then also delivering it to the end user or to the customer, whoever that is, automatically, whether that's through email, maybe it's something they need to print out, it's all dependent on the actual process. So let's go to the next slide. We're going to briefly talk about licensing. Here we're talking specifically about DocFinity, but what's nice is that since we're partners, we license our software actually very similar. We have what we call a core engine. In DocFinity's case, you get all that functionality, scanning, indexing, searching, viewing, the APIs, all for one server price. And then we have concurrent users that connect to that core engine, and then we have additional add-on modules that you could add, for instance, like workflow, like e-forms, like records management. And those modules and those users can be added at any time for no penalty. Xpertdoc has the same kind of licensing philosophy. So what's nice is that when you work with both of us, there's not going to be surprises. Everything is consistent across the board. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to talk about delivery options. What options do you have as a customer for licensing either DocFinity or Xpertdoc? We both have the option to do an on-premises solution where you license the software, we deliver the software on site, and we will install it on your physical hardware, VM instances, whatever the case may be, and then you manage it internally, you manage the hardware. But we also offer both a hosted and SaaS cloud-based offering. The difference between the two, briefly, is the hosted solution is that we actually will host the software that you license on our servers. We maintain the hardware, but you still manage the application from a security standpoint, from a support standpoint internally. And the SaaS-based option is a little bit different, where we not only do the hosting of the hardware, but we also manage the application. You need to add users, we will add the users for you. There's issues with the application, you go to us and we actually fix and support the application. So you do have options with both companies, again, on-premises, hosted, or SaaS. Okay, the next slide, we talk about, for those of you who are familiar with DocFinity or Xpertdoc, what kind of sets us apart in general, both applications, is we're both a flexible platform and a modern architecture. Utilizing web services, we're able to integrate very seamlessly with one another, and everything is published, so we're not trying to hide anything. As part of maintenance, you do get continuous upgrades, you get enhancements, all included with that perpetual maintenance costs. We have a responsive, dedicated technical support team on both sides of the house, where, again, like I mentioned before, since this software is all developed in-house in both organizations, your support team is the one who developed the software. So what that means to you is quick problem resolution. We have a configurable workflow engine. As you can see from the, I know we didn't get too much in the software, but from those diagrams of the workflow solution, that is actually a screen print of our actually workflow designer. So it is point and click, drag and drop. Everything within the system is like that. So I think that's, from a high level, definitely what sets us apart. So now I'm going to actually turn it over to Bersha to kind of talk about delivery.
Unmuted.
Thank you, Ian. That was great, and I appreciate the real deep dive into some of those scenarios. So as I mentioned, I'll take a minute or two just to touch on our delivery methodology. Xpertdoc has a very proven but a functional step approach to deployment. And what was interesting when we started our discussions with the folks at DocFinity was to find how similar our approach and philosophy to deployment was. So this slide actually will share with you some of the phases that we look at a high level. Really, it does address each of the points that need to be looked at, from a simple blueprint of the overall architecture that's required right through to full value recognition back to the environment and to the core teams. Our philosophies for both companies are to come in, support your teams through the deployment, transfer knowledge, transfer technology in as short a time frame as possible, and then leave you to it and support you remotely as needed. typical deployment timeframes are fairly rapid for us. We're in and out usually within 4 to 6 weeks, 8 or 10 if there's a lot of sort of cleanup and background work that needs to go on in the templates. That effort can be done by internal resources through third-party partnerships that we've got with some of the larger consulting firms, or through the professional services teams that are housed within DocFinity and Xpertdoc. The nice thing is our partnership is starting to grow further. We've got folks on both sides of the companies that understand the other companies' technologies as well. So there's certainly, if there's a deep dive that's required, we know how to pull the appropriate partner in, but at least there's some preliminary understanding at high level that can be addressed by both of the parties with the companies that we're working with. I'll just continue forward as well with a few concluding remarks about the partnership. I did mention that we started talking a little under a year ago. The integration efforts that we did then were done within a week's time frame. I think it was actually about 3 days. And the technologies have been tested both in-house at each of our companies, but also in a proof of concept environment, and is starting to be leveraged for deployment with client sites today. We encourage those of you that are attending and those that may get this webinar through other downloads and distributions to reach out to DocFinity or Xpertdoc and the sales teams at either company to explore your requirements a little further. Be happy to do sort of proof of concept on site, or create a statement of works that will follow out of your specific requirements as we start to launch and take the combined solution forward. We didn't get any questions on the panel, just to let you know, as we were going forward. So I will just give everyone a minute or two if they'd like to communicate any questions to us. I'll be happy to take those and field them here. There's one question that's come up that's talking about the migration path from the DocScience world to Xpertdoc with DocFinity. Ian, you might want to contribute to this if you've been involved in any of those discussions. But from an Xpertdoc perspective, that's a common situation that we're encountering, is a lot of the legacy solutions are being ported over to Xpertdoc. So I may have mentioned at the beginning of this session, there is a migration path that we follow. We've automated that process to eliminate at least some and hopefully most of the heartache. There's a certain amount that might be manual that will be done to test the conversion process at the end. There's also an aggressive offer that we're making to DocScience users today that are looking to migrate over. I know that it was probably the preferred solution about 10 years back for a lot of DocFinity clients. And I know that there's been some movement now to migrate to Xpertdoc. So those of you that are interested in exploring that further, we can make that very interesting for the first few that convert over with us through the DocFinity Xpertdoc Alliance. Ian, did you want to add anything to that, or did I cover off?
Yeah, that's a great, thank you for me to speak. I mean, it's a very easy migration from the DocFinity side. For those of you familiar with how DocSci worked from once they completed their document generation output from the DocFinity side, we would just create a cold definition file, which is computer output to Laserdisc, which is enterprise report management, which is essentially taking that print output from, in the past was document sciences, splitting it up, extracting policy number, dates, policyholder name, et cetera, then splitting it up in individual page ranges and then storing them within DocFinity. We would do the same thing for Xpertdoc. So there would be some migration in terms of the cold definition files, but other than that, the transition is very easy.
Unmuted.
That's great. Thanks for that contribution, Ian. I don't see any more questions coming through. Oh, there's a question on the focus of Xpertdoc. So let me just, in terms of industry, so let me just address that very quickly. If you can think of any company or any individual that needs to create personalized content in their communications, that's the type of firm that we would be working with. Now, there are certain industries that are more predisposed to this kind of interaction, and they're the ones that some of the ones that we're working with very aggressively include legal services, government, manufacturing for a lot of their quotes that they send out from a wide SKU base. But Xpertdoc specifically on our outbound activities is very, very focused on the insurance and healthcare segments. We do have quite a bit of activity in those other industries that I mentioned. They typically come to us because of partner engagements where either their technology is leveraging Xpertdoc or they're a services firm and they're bringing us in as a point solution. So hopefully that'll clarify where the focus lies and where the capabilities deliver value. So I don't see any other questions coming through. So I think we will wrap this up at this point, and I once again thank you all for joining us. I do encourage you to reach out to either Ian or myself to explore any further questions that you might have that are specific to your environment. Those of you that may be looking to have a copy of this webinar, we can make that available to you. Just send us a quick email, and we'll provision that for you. Also, for those of you that are on this call that are not familiar with Xpertdoc, if you'd like to stay in touch and learn more about us as time progresses and just stay in the loop, please feel free to come onto our website. You can register for our newsletter, and you'll be kept abreast of all the changes that are happening in the space of document generation. Ian, I thank you again for your participation. I appreciate all the great comments. And
thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.